Hi guys, Aaron here with Ghost Raptor Gaming and Guns, and today I have Q&A session number 2. These Q&A sessions are open to my patrons on Patreon. If you subscribe to me there and pledge $1 a month, you'll get to submit any questions that you want to me to be answered on these Q&A sessions. So we're just going to jump right into it today because I have quite a few questions and I want to get through them as quickly as possible. So first up is Jesse. And Jesse asks, could you go over some of the laws passing from the current administration, what they mean, and how it affects things? Well, so far nothing has passed, but there are some very severe bills that are proposed. HR, I believe it's 127, is one of them, and it is absolutely ludicrous. Basically a 10-round magazine capacity limit. If you have a magazine, like a standard 30-round AR-15 magazine or AK magazine versus a 10-round mag, it's like 20 years in prison and $150,000 fine minimum mandatory, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, if not tyrannical. And there's several other things that fall in the same category and have the same punishment. So, and this is for every offense. So if you are caught with 10 AR-15 magazines that are standard 30-round capacity magazines, you're going to do 20 years in prison and pay $150,000 fine minimum mandatory for every single one of those magazines. There's also like a ban on 50 caliber ammunition. And the reason why I think that we don't necessarily have too much to worry about when it comes to bills like this is how ludicrous they are and how poorly phrased and written that they are. A punishment is that severe for having a 30-round magazine is ridiculous, and I don't think any logical person would vote to support that. Furthermore, the example I just gave of banning 50 caliber ammunition. When I read that actual bill, it didn't actually have any definitions as to what ammunition was or what 50 caliber ammunition was proposed to be banned. So I assume that they mean things like 50 Browning machine gun, particularly 50 BMG, which is used in the Barrett M107 or M82 sniper rifle. But there wasn't a definition, so does that include 50 GI, 50 Action Express, 50 Beowulf? It doesn't say. And then what constitutes ammunition? Is it just projectiles? If you're going to ban the sale of possession of 50 caliber ammunition, can I now get 50 caliber bullets for my muzzle loader? So the fact that there's a lot of gray area, and then couple that with extremely harsh punishments for breaking those laws, I really don't think that the Biden administration is going to be able to get anything passed or approved as far as gun control goes during their administration. They're way too far left on it versus more towards the center. If you're more towards the center and you're a little more reasonable about the things that you want to pass, you're more likely to get those things passed. So I don't really think that we have anything to worry about when it comes to the Second Amendment in that regards. That being said, I do think that we still need to fight them as hard as we possibly can, and I will do my part to do so, and I hope you do too. Moving on from there, Jordan has several questions, and some of these are quite long, so if you get bored with anything, feel free just to jump ahead to the next question. Jordan asks, first of all, what kind of ammo did you avoid buying during this pandemic? Two different types of ammunition were big for me. Steel-cased ammunition. Now, there's nothing wrong with steel-cased ammunition per se, but I did avoid buying it simply because usually it has a tendency to cause, and I don't mean to be too broad or too overbearing, but a lot of guns don't like steel-cased ammunition, so steel-case overall has a tendency to induce a lot of failures with a lot of different guns. I have a CZ75, and that gun's actually specifically tuned for steel-case ammunition. It even says so in the owner's manual. And it even says that if you use brass case or aluminum case ammunition, you may have malfunctions with that. It may be more reliable with steel case than anything else. However, that's the only gun that I have that's specifically tuned for steel case as far as 9mm. I also have a CZ82 9mm Makarov that I'm sure is tuned for it, and I have an AK-74. And I bet you that's probably tuned for steel case ammunition because that's typically used in a lot of Slavic or Eastern European countries. So unless your gun is specifically tuned for steel case, you may have a lot of malfunctions with it. And it was really the only ammunition you could get in bulk, and I just didn't want to spend $1,000 on 500 rounds of steel case 9mm to only have one 9mm handgun that can shoot it reliably. It didn't make much sense to me, so I avoided steel case. The other thing I avoided was a lot of hand loads. Now, I reload and make my own hand loads, but most places that make them, the quality is questionable at best. You don't know what cases they're using, what primers they're using, what powders they're using, what projectiles they're using, how experienced they are with it. In fact, I have a friend of mine who bought 100 rounds of reloaded 9mm ammunition from one of the local gun shops here, and I won't mention which one, but he got 100 rounds, and he said about half of them worked and half of them didn't. And at, literally $1 a round, it's really not acceptable to get that. So I avoid that, with the exception of Bullseye Shooting Supplies. They have hand-loaded ammunition, reloaded ammunition, and I've used it for years and years, just bought reloads and hand loads from them over the past 10 years, and I've never had a problem with them. But generally speaking, steel case and any kind of reload or hand loads that I personally didn't make, or somebody that I don't know made. If somebody I know and trust made them, or I made them, then in that case I got them. Jordan also asks, what ammo have you bought the most, if any? Unfortunately, a lot of the guns that I want to review or am in the process of getting accuracy testing and stuff like that done for them are 9mm, so I end up having to buy a lot of 9mm, which sucks because it is very expensive right now. But mostly what I bought was PMC Bronze and Cellar and Bellet. And it's standard full metal jacketed ammunition from both companies. It was available. I did manage to find it, and whenever I found it, I bought some. Other than that, I bought a lot of the ammunition I previously mentioned. These hand loads from Bullseye Shooting Supplies right here in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. They make a lot of ammunition. They're actually ATF certified, and they sell ammunition through contracting as well. So they make ammunition for other gun stores, mostly in the New England area, but I'm sure they make it for a lot of different places nationally as well. And like I said, I bought a lot of this throughout the years. I've shot a lot of this throughout the years, and I haven't had any issues with it, despite the fact that it's a hand load or a reload. So I bought a lot of that as well, and they really kept me in rounds throughout the whole pandemic for my gun reviews, which is really important because I started this channel during the pandemic, so it's been very tough to keep myself in ammunition for all my gun reviews. So that's mostly what I've purchased. A couple odds and ends, but mostly that's what I've gotten. Jordan also asks, what kind of drills or exercises do you do at home or on the range to keep your marksmanship up, especially with ammo prices being so high? Not a lot, actually. Most of the stuff that I've been doing has been actual trigger time at the range. I've done quite a bit of shooting through the pandemic, and part of that is me just enjoying it, but a big part of it is running this channel. So I spent a lot of time at the range, but generally speaking, I just practice controlled pairs, and I practice fundamentals. Even if I'm just at home, I'm not at the range, I'll pick up, or one of my favorite rifles or my favorite handguns or something like that, and just practice my fundamentals. My standing position, my trigger control, my breathing control, my sight picture, trigger reset. Dry firing really helps you hone in on your fundamentals and keep them really sharp as to where they need to be, because if you can even practice dry firing, it does directly translate to live fire. So a lot of dry firing. And then as far as like actual drills and stuff, I've done not a lot of drills. I have done single man CQB clearing drills of my home. It's something I think you should be very familiar with, how to clear your home. Mike Glover has a really good video on this. I'll put a link in the description for that as well. But it is really good as far as the breakdown of single man CQB in your own home and defending your own home. So I'll put a link in the description for that. But yeah, basically a lot of dry fire. I spent a lot of time at the range and single man CQB, and that's about it. Looking to get back into running a lot more drills like I did when I was in the military. But it's also kind of tough with my schedule. But hopefully that's something I can do in the future. Jordan's next question is, it never ceases to amaze me whenever I go to film, somebody tries to call me. Jordan asks, what is your favorite AK or AKM variant? So, personally, for me, it's really anything made in Russia would be my favorite because they know how to do it. Unfortunately, the AKM is one of the most copied guns in the world, and most of those copies suck. A lot of them are made in Africa or a lot of other European countries, and they simply don't know how to produce a quality AK. There are quite a few quality ones out there, particularly Romanian ones are quite good. But like here in the US, Century Arms will make, they make 4 or 5 different AKs here in the United States, and they all suck. And some of them, like the C39 V2, are actually particularly dangerous. And I wouldn't recommend that you buy anything from Century unless it's imported, and even then probably figure out who made it in the first place before you buy it. If you get like a Wasser 10, those are made in Romania, I believe, and they're quite good. That's a good gun. But if you get something like a Visca or an RAS 47, be prepared to be disappointed because those guns are outright dangerous sometimes. As far as my favorite one that I bought, I only have one right now as far as an AKM variant. This is a Saiga in 545x39. I got this from D&L. I got this in 2016, I believe, before Trump was elected president. During that election cycle, that's when I got it. It's accurate, powerful, very soft shooting, and made in Russia, so I know it's good. And then as far as just some upgrades on it, I got like a no-name side mount. I haven't had any issues with it. It's QD, repeatable 0. I have a Tasco pronghorn, 3 to 9 times magnification scope on here. Decent scope for the price, not great. I like to upgrade that to an LPVO at some point in time, and then put a 45-degree offset red dot sight, probably a TRS 25. And this is unconverted, so I'm going to do a trigger group conversion at some point on it, probably an ALG trigger, and then a US palm grip. And then I have just a crap toe stock on here, which a lot of people are going to knock me for, or I should say buffer tube. And then I have a Magpul MOE butt stock and a CTR cheek riser. I'm going to replace this buffer tube or AR stock adapter with a probably a bone steel arms right side folding M4 stock adapter, and then same thing, Magpul MOE and a CTR cheek riser. So it's still going to go through some upgrades, but it has been 100% reliable, never any issues with it, no matter what round I put through it, and it's dead on accurate. Just a great rifle. You could also get a Mollet Vepr. You could get a Valmet if you could find them. The Mollet Vepr is also made in Russia. And then the Valmet, I believe they're made in Finland. I'm not 100% positive on that, but just really, really good Kalashnikov copies. A gold gun for me would be a CZ2000. That was made from 2000 to 2008, if I recall correctly. And that was made by CZ in the Czech Republic. Absolutely fantastic AK. Standard irons, with, I believe, a rear aperture sight, and then it had flip-up night sights as well with tritium inserts in them, folding stock, a standard thumb safety that you kind of see on a Galil, which is also another good one. I believe it was safe, semi-auto, 3-round burst, and then full auto. Very quick to get into action, and just a really high-quality firearm. I would love to get one. CZ, if you're listening, bring them back, import them in the U.S., they were in 5.56, but please bring them back in 5.45, 7.60x39, and 300 blackout. People will go crazy and buy a ton of them. There's no reason not to make those guns when you have all the machines still sitting there. Another good option would be something from Kalashnikov USA or Palmetto State Armory, particularly the GF3 is quite good. Other than that, that's where it gets kind of iffy, except for one other that comes to mind is the Zastava Arms Z-PAP. That's a very good Kalashnikov as well. But yeah, anything that's imported by Century Arms, do your research. Anything that's made by Century Arms, really do your research and probably avoid altogether because there are a lot of crappy AKs out there. But yeah, the Saiga 545 is my favorite right now until I can get something else. But chances are that's going to remain my favorite, especially after all the upgrades that I have planned for it. Moving on here, Jordan asks, what is in your ideal bug out bag? Well, that's kind of an in-depth question, and the reason that it's an in-depth question is you're talking about a whole myriad of things. First things first, don't bug out unless you have to. In fact, you should bug in. It's safer, and you can store a lot more in your home than you can in a backpack. But so that's the first thing you have to think about. And the next thing is, where am I going to, where am I coming from, and how do I prepare for that environment? Well, if you live in South America, you probably don't want to put an axe in your backpack when you're better off having a machete in there. Likewise, if you're living in Ontario, Canada, you probably want an axe in there and not a machete. So you really need to plan your bug out bag around the environment that you're in and the environment you're trying to get to. You need to have a location in mind beforehand and prepare for that. Now, there are some general things that you should have in your kit. So we'll go from, the basics to the more advanced stuff or mission-oriented specific gear you might want or need. For me, the basics: food, water, and shelter. So food, there's a lot of different things you can do for food, but weight is always a factor. So if you're going to take food that's really heavy, like MREs or like UST survival rations, they are really high in calories. So if it's going to be heavy, you need to offset that with a super high calorie count. If it's going to be lightweight, like freeze-dried food, that's great because it's good for 25 years at a time. It's relatively cheap and it barely weighs anything, but it also doesn't have nearly as much calories as, say, an MRE. So you need to pick what's best for you and then adjust accordingly and keep space and weight in mind. So if I get 5 days worth of freeze-dried food and I put it in my bug out bag, it's going to take up a hell of a lot more space than 5 MREs will, while also not providing the same amount of calories. That being said, I like the freeze-dried food, and that's what I have in my bag because I don't need to worry about rotating it out. If I ever find extra space, I can just cram another pack in there and make up for the lack of calories that I might otherwise be not getting. The next thing is water. You're going to want water as well, and you're going to want ways to purify water too. A survivor's rule of thumb is gain and recycle resources. So wherever you can gain resources without using the ones you currently have on you is always a great option. So I generally recommend that you have a hydration bladder in your bug out bag, and as big as you can get. Mine has a dedicated hydration bladder pouch, and I have quite a large one in there. I think it's 3 or 4 liters. And then on top of that, you might also consider a separate 2-quart canteen to carry with you and a metal bottle. A metal bottle is absolutely essential because you can boil water in it to purify it. So absolutely have a good hydration bladder and drinking tube, and absolutely have a metal bottle. Absolutely important. With that, you might also want to carry water purification systems. I have a Katadyn pump. It's good for like 800 gallons, and I think I have a spare filter with that, so it's 1,600 gallons of water that I can filter with it. I also have a couple of life straws and the metal bottle to boil water, and then I also have iodine tablets, so I can put them into, like, say, my 2-quart canteen, purify water on the go, and then, when I come across water sources, I can use my life straw or my Katadyn to filter water and just intake it directly. So having water on you that's purifying and filling your stomach with water whenever you come across it is really important. So water purification systems, make sure you have those. That covers food and water. The next thing is shelter. You want a quality tent and other things to go with that. So you might want to have a quality tent. My tent that I have, it's not anything particularly nice. It's not like I'm going to climb Mount Everest with it or anything like that, but it's the standard recommended tent from US Boy Scouts. And the reason why I went with that one was it was fairly small, fairly lightweight. It's a 2-person tent, so I can keep my gear in the tent with me. And I know it's going to be fairly durable because of the fact that kids destroy everything that they touch. They just have a tendency to be really rough on stuff. So if the Boy Scouts are saying we recommend this tent, then it's probably a pretty good quality tent. So it didn't take up too much space, it wasn't expensive, and I know it's been thoroughly tested. So I went with that one. But I'm sure there's great options out there: single man tent, US surplus tents, military surplus of all kinds. Basically, as long as it's a single or a 2-man tent and it's military surplus, chances are you're going to be fine. But do your research and figure out what's lightweight and what's tough. So that covers shelter, but there's a few other things you might want to consider with shelter too, like your sleeping bag. I do recommend you have a sleeping bag with you, but again, mission oriented. If you live in Canada, you're not going to want something that's only rated for 50 degrees, and if you're in Brazil, you're not going to want something that's really rated to negative 20 degrees. So you kind of need to be a little more mission oriented with that type of equipment. Now, when it comes to other things that you need to think about, so you've got a tent and a sleeping bag, you got your food, you got your water, shelter's covered, that's great. Fire is absolutely essential, and I feel like you can't carry enough stuff to make a fire happen. I personally have a few lighters, just a few Bic lighters. I have a couple of different waterproof containers of waterproof, windproof matches. I have a flint striker, I have a magnesium stick, flint striker combination, I have a fire piston. On top of that, I have paracord, so I can use a fire bow or a hand drill if necessary to start a fire. I also have fire starters, and the reason why I have the fire starters is, despite the fact that you're probably not going to need them, what happens if you get caught in really bad weather or fall in a river or something like that and you barely get out alive? Well, now you might be hypothermic and you're going to want a fire to dry you out very quickly. So when you're shaking and stuff and your dexterity is all gone, using a flint striker probably isn't the best bet. You want something that you can use very easily, and you want something to get a fire going very quickly. So I have some Coleman fire starters, and I've also made some fire starters, and it's literally just paraffin wax and sawdust. And they're about the size of a hockey puck. And you can make these yourself if you want to, and just put them in a metal container or something and take them with you. Even the ones I've made put out a flame roughly the size of a football and burn for about 20 minutes. And that should give you enough time to warm up a little bit, get your wet clothes off of you, warm up a little bit, and then start gaining some firewood, and also start drying your clothes out and get that fire nice and big. The other reasons why fire is important, just in general, is it's going to cook your food, it's going to keep you warm, it's going to keep predators away, it's going to purify your water, it's going to give you a psychological boost. In a general survival scenario, not a societal collapse, boogaloo, apocalypse style scenario, you can use it to signal for help as well. So fire is a great multi-use item, and I can't recommend that you carry enough stuff to make fire. I think that every way you can think of to start a fire, you should have one of, and then fire starters to boot are always a good option. First aid, you want to consider first aids. I have a standard first aid kit, nothing special in there, but you might want to consider something for a bug out bag, which the term bug out bag always kind of bothered me, but just a general large universal survival kit. If you have a first aid kit in there, you're much better off than not having a first aid kit. And you might also want to consider a real trauma kit, like something a combat medic might carry, or an EMT. What if you get shot? What if you get cut real bad? What if you break a leg? You might want to consider having a serious first aid kit in your bug out bag in order to treat serious injuries should you get one. So that's something I don't have right now, but it is something that I do recommend. If you have the money, get a real trauma kit, quick clot and sutures and that kind of thing, or build one, as long as you have the room for it. And then there's some other items in there that you might want to consider. A folding saw is an excellent piece of kit that you want in there. If you live in the Northeast, you might want to go with an axe. Although I think you can get by with a good fixed blade knife and just batoning it. As long as you have your folding saw, you can cut up firewood relatively quickly. And then if you think it's too big for whatever reason, a good strong fixed blade knife and another piece of wood to baton it and split it will get the job done. Folding saw, fixed blade knife, folding knife. Those are essential pieces of equipment. And then you might want to consider some other stuff. Paracord is always a good option. And then you want to think about clothing. You might want to think about, if you're in a hot environment, you might want to have spare clothing, lightweight, kind of like what I'm wearing right now. This is actually a quick drying lightweight shirt, and I have a Wrangler outdoor pants on, and these are a lightweight quick drying pant as well. So you might want to carry something like that. If you're in a colder environment, you're going to want a jacket, waterproof, windproof jacket, waterproof, windproof pants that are insulated. You might want to have another base layer. Me and my kit, I have a base layer, I have a middle layer, which is like, we call it the waffle suit in the Army, but it's kind of like a North Face light jacket, and if you think of that material, same thing for the pants. And then I have waterproof, windproof, insulated jacket with a hood and pants as well. With that, I also have wool socks, and then I have 2 other pairs of socks in there and foot powder. You're going to want to stay warm and take care of your feet. Especially take care of your feet, because if you don't take care of your feet, you're not getting anywhere. Then I also have a good hat. I have a Ushanka in there, and I have a scarf. I also have lightweight gloves and wool gloves, wool mittens specifically. So if I'm in a very cold environment, like New England gets, and I'm trying to bug out somewhere, I am fully prepared for the elements as well. Some other stuff that you're going to want in there, Mylar blankets are great. Garbage bags are great. If you want to be found orange, if you don't, green or black. You can make a quick pop tent. If you're injured or you're sick, it's much easier to do that than it is to assemble your tent. And the Mylar blanket is good just to tuck into a lightweight sleeping bag to give it some extra insulation. My sleeping bag is only rated to like 30 degrees, so I have a couple of Mylar blankets as well, so I can tuck them inside and wrap myself in there, and now I have a lot more insulation than I would than just having that sleeping bag. But if I put something that's related to negative 25 degrees or something like that, my bug out bag, I'm taking up a huge portion of my kit. So a moderate weight sleeping bag and then Mylar blankets kind of is a stopgap and works for me without taking up too much weight or taking up too much room and adding too much weight. The other thing that you might want to have, and I think it's great, is something for your mind. You're going to want to have something that keeps you thinking, because it's going to boost your morale, and it's really going to get you thinking about what the next step is or how you can survive better. And one of these items that's great is a book, specifically a survival guide. This right here is the National Geographic's Complete Survival Manual. I have 2 copies of this, one sitting on my bookshelf. This is the one from my bookshelf just to peruse from time to time, and one directly in my bug out bag. This is a wealth of knowledge, and it is probably the single best survival handbook out on the market. I absolutely love this thing, and I highly recommend it. Reading like that is going to help keep your mind sharp, and it's going to teach you a lot of things that you might not know on the fly, so it's going to help you survive in general. The next thing you might want to think about is a weapon system directly in the kit. Not, I'm bugging out, I have my armor, I have my Kevlar, I have my favorite rifle, 500 or 600 rounds of ammunition, plus my bug out bag. You might want something in the bug out bag as a standalone weapon system, and I recommend a semi-automatic takedown 22 rifle. And the reason why I recommend that is because you can carry a lot of rounds. The guns are compact, they're relatively lightweight, and if you need to use it for self-defense, you absolutely could, but it's primarily going to be a game getter, and I guarantee you that the takedown 22 is a hell of a lot quieter than your AR-15. So having a weapon system in there is also vital. I think you should have one, and as soon as you get away from people and you can stay away from people, use that rifle to your advantage to shoot small game as well as trapping. Use your paracord and stuff like that to set traps. If you're not sure what to do as far as setting traps, refer to your survival manual. And it will have great pictures and everything like that that will teach you how to set traps. Where to set them, what to use for bait, that kind of stuff. The other thing you should have is a fishing kit, even if it's a tin this big or even a coffee can that you've just packed with some fishing line, hooks, bobbers, sinkers, whatever you have in there that you bait, any kind of lures that really work well for you when you normally fish. Get some extras, throw them in there, because it's a great relaxing activity, and it's kind of a passive way to get food. Set some traps, go out and fish. Don't shoot. Don't advertise your position more than you need to. And if you happen to be there with your 22 and you see a squirrel or a rabbit or just anything small that you can eat, and you can take it with a 22, if you think it's safe to take it, take it. But what you want to do is not advertise your whereabouts. Stay away from people, and don't engage any threat that you need to unless it's right on top of you. And those are general good rules of engagement that'll keep you alive in a really dangerous apocalyptic boogaloo style of survival scenario. But really what you need to do going into building a bug out bag is don't look at it as a bug out bag, look at it as a comprehensive survival kit. Anything that you would need to survive, basically anything, that's the way to look at that. And the final element, the most important thing I think that I look for in a bug out bag is the bag itself. If you try and fit all of this stuff into a JanSport backpack, you're going to have a hard time, and 3 or 4 miles after bugging out, you're going to be dying. You're going to hate this bag, you're going to hate your life, you're going to be miserable. So you want a great rucksack. Nice wide shoulder straps, a waist strap, a chest strap, tons of adjustability, lots of padding. Something that's going to be very comfortable to carry for a while, and then if it starts to wear on a certain part of your body, your lower back, your chest, your shoulders or something, just you'll be able to adjust the straps real quick, and now you can remove that stress and you can relocate it to another part of your body and keep it cycling throughout. So you're not like, oh my god, my shoulder's killing me, this bag sucks the entire time. You readjust it a little bit, now it's put pressure on your chest and your waist instead. And even distribution is also important. The way you pack your bag is important. So remember how you're packing it. Try and keep everything nice and balanced and have a lot of adjustability to it. And if you're able to do that, you're gonna be fine. And I think that about covers everything. Food, water, shelter, general survival supplies, weapon system, and the kit itself. Also, you might want to throw in a couple odds and ends in there, like a compass, a deck of cards, stuff like that. There's little last minute items that you might want to throw in there. Just think about it, and do your research, and I'm sure you'll be able to find or build a really good comprehensive survival kit or bug out bag for yourself. But those are just some of the things that I have in mind and some of the things I look for. Nora asks, most of the videos out there as far as guns cater to a male audience. What would be your top 3 picks for a first-time female gun buyer? Well, I think that you're correct. Most firearms videos do cater directly to the male population. However, the female population is the largest growing demographic when it comes to the firearms community, and I think that we need to cater more towards women as well as men. And really, your videos should be designed to cater towards everybody. And I think mine are too. I do a lot of shooting, and there are women that shoot with me, and I try to keep in mind, hey, is this a good gun for a woman? If it's not, then I say it. Like, hey, if you're a woman, you might stay away from this gun. If you're a guy, you might be better off with this gun, or it won't be as hard for you to shoot as it would for a woman to shoot. That being said, 2 of my recommendations are the same type of recommendation that I would give to anybody else. And then there's 1 recommendation that is specific to women. So top 3, there's a ton of great guns out there, so I'm just picking 1 from each category. 1 rifle, 1 pistol, and 1 shotgun. Actually, I have 2 pistols, but we'll get into that in just a moment. So we'll start with the rifle. The rifle that I recommend for first-time gun owners, male or female, is a semi-automatic 22. Now this is just an example. This is my Marlin Model 60. It's a tube-fed, not magazine-fed, 22 caliber rifle. And the reason why I say 22 is, particularly a semi-auto, is they're very easy to get the hang of. They're very easy to shoot. They're very lightweight. They tend to be well-balanced and small. They're cheap. The ammunition is cheap, and you can really practice your fundamentals with a 22 and then get a more advanced or a larger caliber rifle later. And then when in doubt, you can use this for target shooting, small game shooting, and self-defense if you absolutely need to. This has an 18-round magazine. I don't think I know anybody who would be able to survive 18 rounds of 22 center mass. So when in doubt, you can use that. But this is what I recommend, a semi-automatic 22. The Marlin Model 60 is a great option, and the Ruger 1022 is also an excellent option. So that's my recommendation for any first-time gun owner, male or female, for a rifle. And yes, these are squirrel tails. This is my squirrel hunting gun. Now, moving on from there, a handgun. Now, I would recommend a 22 caliber handgun, but if you're looking for something more self-defense oriented, this is where things get a little more complicated. So here, and this is generally my first recommendation, I have a 38 caliber revolver. This is a Smith & Wesson Model 10 full size, and I do recommend a full size gun if you're a first-time firearm owner. And the reason for that is they're much easier to shoot. If you get a subcompact gun or a snub-nosed revolver, they're going to be much more difficult for you to shoot and get the hang of, and they may not be as pleasant to shoot. So always a full-size handgun. And the reason why I recommend a full-size 38 in particular is the size and the balance is good. They don't tend to be too expensive. 6 shots of 38 is more than enough to get the job done in basically any situation you're in, and they're very easy to use. Here's your thumb latch. Push it forward, back, or up, depending on what you have, and then use your index finger to open the cylinder, and that's it. If you need to empty your cylinder, your ejector rod is right here. Push it with your thumb, or just give it a firm slap, depending on your situation, and it's empty. And then the rest is kind of self-explanatory. It's very easy to figure out what way the bullets are supposed to be facing, where they're supposed to go, and then once they're in, you just close the cylinder with your thumb, and you can aim and pull the trigger to shoot it. So it's a very easy system to familiarize yourself with. It's a very easy system to shoot, and relatively soft shooting. 38 is powerful enough to do whatever you got to do with it. So a 38 double action, single action revolver, particularly a full size one, is a great handgun for any first time gun owner. Now, that isn't to say that an automatic isn't a good option either. A semi-automatic handgun is also a good option, provided that it's very simple. Here I have a Glock 21. I'm not recommending a Glock 21 for a first-time gun owner. I would say get a 9mm instead, not a 45 or a 40, because chances are you're not going to enjoy those as much as you would a standard 9mm. Now, the reason why I recommend a very simple semi-auto is revolvers aren't for everybody. And a lot of people are saying, well, you know, a semi-automatic platform might not be the best for a woman, as if a woman can't figure out how to use a semi-automatic handgun. It's really sexist. This is pretty simple to operate. Insert your rounds into the magazine. If you're not sure what to do, YouTube it. You're going to learn how to load your magazine. After that, simply insert the magazine into the gun and then chamber a round, and you're good to go. There's no safety on a Glock besides the inertial trigger safety, so it's a point and shoot affair at that point. And then to reload, hit your magazine release, insert a new magazine, and chamber a new round. It's a pretty simple process, and I would say that most people who think that an automatic for a first-time gun owner is too complicated don't know what they're talking about. These are very simple to operate guns, and there's no reason why a first-time gun owner would be worse off with a semi-automatic handgun, particularly a Glock, than they would a revolver. As far as shotguns go, and this is the one thing that I will specifically say, I will specifically state a different recommendation for a man versus a woman. For a man, it's a 12 gauge. For a woman, I do recommend a 20 gauge. And as far as shotguns go, for any first-time gun owner, the double barrel shotgun is a great way to go. This one in particular is an Ithaca. It is a side-by-side double barrel shotgun in 20 gauge. And the reason why I recommend these is they're very simple guns. They're very simple to load, unload, disassemble, service, everything you need to do. And the reason why I recommend that is, particularly for a woman in 20 gauge, is because they're lighter, they tend to be well balanced, and they tend to have a relatively short stock. which means that when you pick this gun up, you're going to say, wow, it's actually kind of light. You're going to say, wow, it's really handy. I can whip this thing around very easily and get it to where I need it to be pointed in the first place. Then a stock is pretty comfortable, and it's, the length of pull, since women tend to be smaller stature than men, is also comfortable for you. It's not too long and it's not too short. The other reason I recommend, but as far as 20 gauge goes, it's much softer shooting than 12 gauge, but it's still very capable. It's going to do basically anything that a 12 gauge can do within, a certain limit. Are you going to target shoot with it? Are you going to shoot clay pigeons with it? Are you going to hunt small or upland game with it? There's loads for all that stuff, so there's no reason why you shouldn't own a 20 gauge. In fact, there's a lot of reasons why you should own a 20 gauge. But basically the fact that it's not going to recoil as much, the fact that it's easier to handle as far as size and weight goes for a woman, that's why I recommend the 20 gauge shotgun, particularly the double barrel. If you were a man, I would recommend a 12 gauge double barrel shotgun because of all the same reasons, except if you're a man, there's a little bit of macho-ness to this. Well, I don't need a 20 gauge, I'll get a 12 gauge like a real man. But in reality, most men are able to handle 12 gauge no problem, and some women struggle with 12 gauge, so 20 gauge is better for women. You might also consider a simple double barrel 410 if you're really recoil shy, you have arthritis or something like that. Or even if you want to educate a child, say a 10 or a 12-year-old, before they start hunting, how to use a shotgun effectively, a 410 is also a great option. And then I have one question here from Andrew. Here we go. Preferred caliber in material. Or I should say, what is your preferred caliber in material? That's also kind of an in-depth question. Basically brass case and full metal jacket. If I'm going with a hollow point, especially because I reload and hand load, I like Hornady XTPs for my projectiles. They are consistently accurate, they're consistently reliable, they're very high quality bullets. So as far as bullets, Hornady XTPs. As far as cases, brass, almost always brass if I can get it, then aluminum, then steel. Preferred caliber is a very complicated question, but I'll attempt to answer that the best I can. So preferred caliber is a complicated question for a lot of different reasons. As far as some people I can ask somebody, hey, what's your favorite caliber? And a lot of people are going to say something like 5.56. I don't really have a lot of skin in the game when it comes to calibers. I think as far as handguns go, my favorite caliber is .357 Magnum. And the reason for that is a .357 Magnum revolver is going to be able to do basically anything you need it to do. If you are worried about defending yourself against large animals or predators like a mountain lion or a black bear, jacketed soft point 158 grain round will take down a black bear or take down a mountain lion, no problem. If you're worried about self-defense from, say, people or smaller animals like dogs, a 110 grain semi-jacketed hollow point is going to hit hard, and it's going to be able to handle any two-legged threat that you might have or any kind of dog that might attack you. Or even moderate-sized cat like a lynx or something like that. It's light enough where it's not going to recoil too bad, and it's definitely going to stop that threat. And then if you're worried about just target shooting or something like that, the lighter loadings, 110, 125 grain, are good for target shooting. And it's also quite accurate loading. And then when in doubt, if you're like, oh, 357 Magnum's a little too much, you can always load your 357 Magnum with 38 specials. And there's a myriad of loadings on that as well, all the way down to like 65 grain. If it's like a frangible or a 90 grain round, they have quite a few. And they go all the way up again to 158 grain or even 200 grain projectiles. So a 357 Magnum in general is my preferred handgun, my preferred caliber. But I do like a lot of other handgun cartridges. You got, right now it's like you got 9mm guys, 40 guys, and 45 guys. And I don't fall into any column. I think they're all good, actually. 9mm is a great caliber, 40 is a great caliber, 45 is a great caliber. Hell, 357 SIG is a great caliber. And I think the more guns that you have in inventory, or I should say the more calibers you have in inventory, the better off you are. So I try to get as many different calibers as I can. But as far as handgun goes, really my favorite is 357 Magnum. Rifles, you're going to get a similar answer out of me for rifles. I like intermediate cartridges. They're small, they're lightweight, they're soft shooting, they have repeatable accuracy, things like that. But as far as, am I a 5.56 guy, am I a 7.62 by 39 guy? No. I have a 5.56, I have a 5.45 AK. I will be getting a 7.62 by 39 gun somewhere in the future, whether it's an SKS or an AK, I don't know yet. But I really have no problem with any of those intermediate calibers. Even 300 Blackout I think is a good round. They're all good in different ways, and they're all effective in the same ways, relatively speaking. And then you have full-size rifle cartridges. There's a lot of full-size rifle cartridges out there, and I don't think I really have a favorite. I guess if I had to pick, it would be 7.62 by 54 millimeter rimmed. And that's going to surprise some people, but the reason for that is it is the oldest or longest serving cartridge used by any military. Invented in, I believe it was designed in 1891 for the Mosin Nagant rifle. It, at the time, was literally the most cutting edge round out on the market. It is comparable to 7.62 by 51 millimeter NATO, also known as 308 Winchester. And that came out like 50 years before 308 was invented. So it edges 308 out, and it has been around for a much longer period of time, and I also think it has slightly more inherent accuracy behind it than a lot of other rifle cartridges. And this is something that a lot of people are going to be like, what are you talking about? The reason for that is that I think if you built a custom competition like match rifle from the ground up, 7.62 by 54 millimeter rimmed has a couple of things to offer that a lot of other rounds don't. It can headspace off of the case mouth, which isn't common for match rifles. Most rifles actually are headspaced off the shoulder, but you could also headspace them off the mouth as well. The 7.62 by 54 millimeter rimmed round has an advantage that you could also headspace it off of the rim, so you could do it from the mouth, the shoulder, and the rim. So, and even if you couldn't do it off the mouth, you could do it from the shoulder and the rim. So you still have one more point of reference for head spacing on that cartridge than you do on most other rifle cartridges, and so that can lead to better accuracy. Performance is also excellent. It's a very ballistically efficient cartridge, and it's dirt cheap. You can get it from basically anywhere, and you can get it as cheap or cheaper than 308. So right now 308 is going for like $1 a round, and 7.62 by 54 isn't. It's going for like 75 cents a round. And then before the pandemic, you could get it for like 40 cents a round, and 308 was like 50 cents a round. So it's always cheaper. The other thing is having a rimmed round helps facilitate extraction better. So I mean, if I really had to go down to it and say favorite full-size rifle cartridge, 7.62 by 54 for the reasons that are previously stated. But I like 8mm Mauser, I like 308, I like 270, I like 243, 6.5 Creedmoor, 7mm Mauser, 338 Lapula Magnum, 300 Win Mag, you know, a 6.5 by 55, 7.5 by 55. They're all excellent cartridges, and there's no real need to play favorites. I think that you should own one of all of those. Every full-size rifle cartridge that you can go and get from like Walmart or a small gun shop, you should probably own one if you can, because this pandemic has shown that certain cartridges are going to be hard to find, but if you have a large inventory of firearms in different calibers, you're still going to be able to get ammo. It might not be for your absolute favorite rifle, but it might be for another rifle that you really like, so why not own it? So yeah, really no favorite rifle cartridge. And then shotguns, I think my favorite is 12 gauge overall, just because there's a wide variety of ammunition you can get. You can get a lightweight target load, and you can go all the way up to like custom 3.5-inch buckshot magnums, which are insanely powerful. So you can go from something that's great to shoot a dove with, or something that you could quite literally kill a grizzly bear with. So 12 gauge is obviously king for a reason, but I like 20 gauge, I like 410. I don't have a 16 gauge, but I'd like to get into that. Especially because that's on the rise in popularity again. And 10 gauge I probably wouldn't get, but if I started seeing a lot of ammunition suddenly become available for it, I might invest in that as well. But for a shotgun, 12 gauge. And I think that that's about that when it comes to favorite cartridges overall. And I don't think we have anything else to talk about today. I'm pretty sure that's all the questions. So if you guys like this content, you want to ask questions, you want to see more of this content, go ahead and support me on Patreon. If you support me for the minimum of $1 a month, you'll get to ask me these questions. Again, link in the description. A link in the description to Mike Glover's video on single man CQB as well. I hope you really liked the video, and I appreciate you tuning in and watching the video for its entirety. Thank you so much for supporting me, guys. I will let you know when the next Q&A session is, so you can get those questions to me. And until then, I will see you later. This has been Aaron with Ghost Raptor Gaming and Guns. Thank you.